explain the problem I'm trying to solve on Godot. And in order to solve this problem, decided that it's probably a good idea to read Chromium's source code, which I was thinking about doing already for a long time. So yeah, I'm gonna study from the standpoint of trying to solve the problem. But yeah, I might focus only on solving the problem and then going more in depth into Chromium later. And I thought that I was gonna be able to go over with the debugger today, but maybe I'm probably not gonna be able to because the documentation is kind of confusing. So I'm having to build the source code again. And basically the reason why is because for VS Code, you have to, in order to be able to debug with VS Code, you have to create two different files. One is the tasks.json and the other is the launch.json. And they have this on the documentation here, this tutorial. But I only saw this tutorial later. So they have one tutorial for building the source code, and they have another tutorial for setting up the VS Code. So the first thing that is confusing here, there's two things that are confusing. One thing that I should do is to, so first I try to put this on a different folder, but then the Windows complains because of the size of one path. So it's recommended that you put the source code, the folder where you're gonna put the files, on the C path, because then the path is very short and then it doesn't give you the error. And I have a few other errors as well. But basically what you have to do is to clone the Chromium source codes on this folder, and then you have to download this depot tools as well, which is a bunch of Python files and bash script files that they have in order to make it easier to build the source code, which is similar to Godot, I assume. Like it's a Python system that is going to build the commands for the C++ compiler to compile all the files, because build systems are very annoying in C++. So you have to download this and you have to put this on the path, which is just clicking variables, then you go environment variables, you click on path and edit, and I have to put the path to this above any Python paths you have, because I assume that they need to have the priority. So when the OS is going to look for the commands to the Python version, it looks for the Python that they have first, instead of using the other ones. And this basically is a list of paths that allow you to call executables and batch files, I think, from the command line. So by putting this on path, you can call the commands that they tell you to use from the command line. Just basically these commands here. So one thing that is confusing is these arguments here that I didn't read on the first time. But so the first time I didn't. So the first command you have to run is this gen out, and then they recommend on the documentation to put the default name. So out/default with no arguments. I did on the first time, but this is the part that is kind of confusing because I don't know. But I assume that if you do that with no arguments, it's going to build the default build, which is the release build, I think. But I'm not 100% sure. But if you want to build the debug build, you have to pass these arguments. And the difference between them is going to be symbols, which is basically compiler flags that you use so that the final executables and the final object files have the names kind of like. It allows the debugger to attach to the process and to be able to know like the breakpoints, where to put the breakpoints. I don't know the nuances very well, but it's basically on a simplified way in a concept level is like that's how it works. That's why you have different versions of the build. The difference is going to be the compiler, and the way you differentiate that is by putting the arguments in the command line. So this is the thing that is kind of annoying here that they didn't talk about. So they recommend you to use the default path on the documentation, which is this path here. So first you have to run this command to generate the setup of the build. And then you have to run another command to actually create the executable in the end, which is this Auto Ninja here. The Auto Ninja is the tool that they have. So they use the Ninja compiler, which is a C++ compiler. And they have these Auto Ninja tools to build everything. So I assume that they probably have like a script on the file that is going to run a bunch of commands that is going to allow the system to find all the files, source files to build the final executable. And they recommend you to put this out slash default here. But the problem is that the VS Code launch and task JSONs that they create on the other tutorial, they expect this out slash debug instead, or the out slash release to work. So this part I'm not 100% sure, but what I'm doing now is I ran again the command, and then I passed the arguments to create the debug build, and then I put a different path here, which is the one that they expect here. And then I'm having to compile the whole thing again, which takes a massive amount of time. So that's the reason why I think you're probably not going to be able to go over with the debugger now. Yeah, so the other thing that they talk about on the other, I think they talk about, I've seen briefly this one, but I didn't pay too much attention. I was trying to solve the other problems while I was reading this. And I talked to ChatGPT as well, and it seems that there is like a hacky way to do this where you use a symlink or something like that in order to link the paths so that the system that they have understands that even though you have the out slash default, it's going to consider that as the out slash debug. But the thing that I'm not so sure, and I don't know, is like the type of build you have to have on the out default because of the flags there. So I think that because I didn't pass the flags, it's very likely that if I try to debug with that build, it's not going to work because it doesn't have the symbols. So that's the reason why I'm running this again. I'll wait to see if it's streaming. So before I go over the source code, I'm going to explain the problem I'm having on Godot and the reason why. So the first thing that I tried to do was to read the Windows terminal source code, which is another project. But I couldn't solve looking into this code as well. So like the issue is when I'm trying to create something that allows me, I'm trying to create basically a custom navbar instead of having the window. So it's basically like what VS Code does here. So by default, Godot is going to use the default OS window, which I don't like, and it takes more space. And Godot and other applications as well, they create their own custom bar. And that's what I'm pretty sure that the browser does as well, because it's able to put everything here. If the browser had the default window, then they would have to put this like on a different spot than the same level as the icons are. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. But the issue is when you put the borderless option, it might be very slow to run everything because it's compiling this stuff here, so it makes everything else slower. But in order to create a borderless window on Godot, you have to call the display server. The display server is going to be the class that manages the display, as the name says. And this is the class that actually uses the API of the operational system to actually create the window. So it's just like everything else on Godot. You have a base class, which is the display server, and then you're going to have derived classes that are for each specific platform. So Windows is going to be display server Windows, and the display server Windows is going to create, instead of its function, is going to call functions from the operational system to actually create the window. And these options here are going to change the flag, which is what the Windows API does. This is another thing that I really don't understand why they did it like this. It doesn't make any sense to me. Because when you create a borderless window, you also remove the decoration. And the decoration is like it's kind of like a border around the window that allows the operational system to do the resizing and dragging. And I think maybe other things. But when you do the borderless window, the style of the borderless window, it removes this decoration, which means you have to create everything else yourself, which really doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm sure that there might be some explanations why they do this. Like usually, it's either something to do with the trade-offs under the hood, or it's gonna be like based on the development history that it got to the place it is. So I'm sure there is a reason for this. But it's kind of annoying because you can't really see the source code on Windows. So you have to go based on the API. So I think that the solution to this should be, so here in this case, I put that to false. So this is the thing that I'm saying. So this border here is from the operating system. It's from Windows that creates. So if you pass the flag to true, then allows me to use this one that I built as a border, which frees up space. But then there's two main problems. One is the maximize. When you click on the maximize without the border, instead of going like this, it goes through full screen, which I think is like a default behavior on Windows, and is because of the decoration. So since when removing the border, it removes the decoration as well, it's going to go to full screen instead of maximizing the window, which leads to a bug when you try to minimize, because it tries on the tab bar class, it tries to find the value and it doesn't have the value. But it's not that big of a deal, but going to full screen is the big of a deal. So I have to figure out how to solve this. And the other thing that is kind of annoying is that when you click on the application icon here, it minimizes, and when you click back, it maximizes, which is the default behavior for all the other applications as well. Like on Chrome is the same thing. And all the other applications is the same thing. But if you remove the border, then it doesn't do that. So I'm trying to figure out how to solve this. So these are the main two problems. I'm going to explain there. So I'm going to put this to true and show the error. But since when you remove, you have to do everything yourself. So I created the buttons there, and I used GPT to help me. And then I put these functions to work as the events, like the functionality of the buttons. And basically what they're doing is changing the mode for now of the window, which is the way that the class is going to determine the logic of what happens. So mode window should be on the window, and the mode maximize should be the window maximize when you click the button, and the full screen should be the full screen. But when you move the window, it doesn't happen. And then there's the show events for when you click the application icon, this notification application focus in, and there's another event. But the way that they do it, the way that it actually works is based on this class here, which is the direct API from two windows. So this function is a function from Godot that is called from the function from the operational system. And you can see on the documentation, so this documentation here explains the styles, which obviously are the same ones that they use on the Windows version. Like you call a function and then you pass these flags here to the function, and then based on whatever flags you pass, it changes the kind of window you create. So Godot uses which I think all the other applications use as well, the WS pop-up style, which is for custom title bars and basically what I'm trying to achieve, which I believe that Chrome uses as well, and the Windows internal uses as well. So I am trying to. I studied the Chrome, the Windows internals, but the problem with the Windows internals is that they use another library or another thing that Windows has, which is XAML or something like that, which is another like API that allows you to create more customized GUIs. And I didn't want to dive too deep into this because it's going to be harder to translate. So what I'm thinking about is like going over the Chromium's source code, trying to understand how their system, how they do it when it comes to the custom tab bars, and then trying to see how to convert that into Godot. Yeah, so this is the style that they use, and I think, yeah. So I'm going to show there. And the other thing for the application icon, the other function that matters is this one. So this function is called from this one, and this one is the Windows API. So Windows is going to call this based on how you set up the window, which I think they use create window. So this is like the bridge between the Windows API and the Godot classes. This is going to be the display server window, and then it's going to call the other function. And this function here is the one that is going to capture the events of what happens on the window. I think it's create window. Yeah, so it basically here. Yeah, so I think that you can put, but it's probably from the API. It has to be this like the same type, same signature of the function, because this is probably from the API as well. And this allows you to create the window using the Windows API. And this function is going to run on the main setup function. When Godot's setting up the engine, it's going to call a function from the display server, which I think is great, which the display server classes subscribe to, and they put the callback functions that they want to be called when the window is created. So like based on the whatever operating system is running and whatever platform is running, Godot's gonna find that callback function that's supposed to run. That callback function is gonna initialize whatever type of class the current build expects, which is gonna use the operating system API to create the window and set up the messages. So this is probably a type from, yeah, it's a type from Windows. I think it creates something. Go to main. I think it's on main setup true. On the setup true function, from what I remember, is going to initialize. Display driver. I still don't understand very well the relationship between the server and the other parts, because it is kind of confusing. I remember that I went over this to understand the like how Vulkan is related to everything, but I kind of forgot. Yeah, so basically this function here. So display server creates gonna depend on the initialization of the classes, I think. Yeah, so it uses this server creates create function. Let's see. Yeah, so here it's gonna register with this, which means that when you're running the Windows version, it's gonna call this callback functions to initialize the window. And this create function is the one that creates the object. So here is when it initializes, and then inside of the constructor is going to call the operating system API to generate the window. So I guess the rendering driver is going to be connected through the constructor. Let me go back. I want to see what moment it calls this. Rendering driver. Yeah, so it saves the rendering driver inside of this class. So I assume that's going to use the driver for the draw calls and stuff like that. Yeah, but the server is like the backend. And there's multiple different classes that work as the backends on Godot, like these servers, and then they send the information, I think, to these drivers to create the, or do the draw calls. Also, when initializing the operational system, it's going to call this function. This relationship is the one that I'm talking about that is kind of confusing. There is the display server here, and there's another class there. Display server. Oh, so I guess it's the same thing. The display server is going to be the... Yeah, it makes sense because it's display server on this. So on the derived class is going to have the... Each derived class is probably going to have this register window driver. And the base class also has that. And it's part of the virtual function of the base class. And that's how they do it. Or maybe not. So it might be different for each one. But all of them are going to have to are gonna have to register this create function, because that's obviously what's gonna be called there on the initialization. So whatever function they put as a callback there is gonna run, is gonna initialize the server. But for the stuff that I'm trying to solve, this part doesn't matter that much. What matters the most is how it parses the messages there. So the events is the way that you're gonna see, you're gonna put the logic that's gonna determine what happens when you click the icon of the application. So it'll be on this function here. Yeah, so here, these messages here are from the Windows API. And the one that matters is the activate. So here they put, this one is the one that I put, to see if I could solve the issue. So actually I have to delete this to show like how it works now. I'm gonna show how it works now, and then I'm gonna show when I put this other part here. Basically, this is gonna run every time after you click the icon of the application. I think you can see the messages here as well, the explanation of each message on the documentation. And maybe it's another thing there. So basically what I did on the Windows terminal is search for this, and it is very simple the way that they do it. They just toggle the state of the application based on this function here, but on Godot for some reason doesn't work. So this part is kind of confusing, but I think what happens is that probably Windows under the hood has logic to like activate the thing when you have the normal when you have the normal window, the operation system is gonna have the logic to toggle back and forth between the state to show the application and then to minimize. But if you remove, if you put borderless window, then for whatever reason it doesn't work anymore. And then it just focuses on the application. Trying to find on the history the command. So this code has the default behavior of what happens. I'm gonna show what happens when you set the thing there as well. So when you set this to true, basically the way that it works is that it's gonna change a flag there that it uses on the. So it pass the flag here. Then it calls this update style. So this WD is the window. So it stores the window on the vector, and each vector has this window data, which has the data for the window, which is initialized on when it's initializing there on the operating system function. So basically this is gonna save the state, and then it's gonna make the other logic based on this state here. And the function that matters is the update window style. That's the function that uses the operating system API to change the style of the window. So on the borderless is gonna be true here. When you pass this to true, it's gonna enable. And this show window is a function for the operating system that is gonna change the window as well. It doesn't always show, but yeah, so it's from the operating system. So this is from Godot. And this window style is how they get the style from the function. So they pass these two arguments here to the function, and then inside of this function they put do the boolean OR to put together the flags, and then they pass this to this function, I think, or to one of these functions that's gonna come from, it's gonna be from the operating system, or is it might be inside of the function. Yeah, so this is from the operating system. This is other two is probably from the operating system as well. But I think for the window it might be inside of the function. So the flags that it uses, oh, let's do this one first. The flags that it uses to create a window are these flags here, and these flags are the same one that you have in the documentation. So like the flags here, and the borderless is gonna be this WS pop-up here that it uses. So when you use this flag to create the window, it removes the standard, the default thing, but then it removes the decoration as well, which removes the resizing ability, the dragging ability, and you have to implement the minimize, maximize, and close yourself, the logic. And that's when everything breaks. It might take a very long time to build because it's building other stuff. So maybe I should go over Chromium while this build and come back to this later. So I think that the logic here doesn't do anything when it comes to maximizing or minimizing the window. All that they are doing, so the maximizing and minimizing, I think they expect to come from the operational system. But on other applications that have custom windows, they put the logic on this because this is the thing that is going to run whenever you click the application icon. So this is where you put the logic to toggle between minimize and maximize when you click the application icon. But there's a different state as well, is when the application is maximized, but you click outside of the application, and that's when you're gonna emit focus out or focus in. But it's a different thing than the application, clicking on the application icon. So I think all that the Godot implements is the logic to focus in and out of the application. So when you click outside, it's going to call this function from the other one, and it's going to pass this parameter is going to be inactive. I think it's WA inactive, which means it's going to run this logic. This logic sends the events to the window class, which the display server creates, I think, with this window event focus out, and this is going to call the notification function for all the nodes of the scene, and then you can implement the logic you want. Or it's going to call this. So this function is going to call from its event callback, I think. I think it's like this, the name of the function. No, it's on the window. Alright, so let me basically this function here. So the other function is gonna call this function here, which is gonna pass the event, and then it's called, I think it calls, yeah, propagates window notification with these events here. So after it calls this, that's why you can put the logic as well on your class. So there's two different ways I can try to solve this. One is to put the function on this event, but like I said, because it is different, like this is when you click on the application, and this also runs when you click the icon. And the focus out is when you click outside of the application, but it's not the same thing because I want to toggle between minimize and maximize, between minimize and restore the states of the window when I click on the application icon. So that's why I want to study Chromium's source code. And also the maximize problem is kind of annoying as well. So when it comes to Chromium, the other thing that is kind of weird is that VS Code, they talk about this on this page here. I talk about VS Code build. Is that Chromium or VS Code by default, they filter out the out folders for whatever reason. So it doesn't show there on the directory, but it exists. If you open the VS Code from the source path, which is the one that they recommend you to build. So the way that I did it, I think I just followed the documentation there, but I created this folder to encapsulate everything. Then you clone to this Chromium here. I think this is going to be the source code initially. Then you download the depot tools on the other folder. Yeah. Load the depot tools here. Then you put this path there on the variables, environment variables. Then you run the commands that they tell you to command from the command line. And that's gonna use the tools that they have here to generate on the path you pass as a flag. So this command here allows you to determine what path is gonna. This path here is gonna be from the source folder, which is inside of this Chromium. It's gonna be the source. So this is gonna generate on the out folder of that the final build files. But I think on the documentation they tell you to open from this folder here. So if you open VS Code from this folder, then it doesn't show the out file, which is the one that I have here. It doesn't show the out here, but it does have. That's why I ran this command here to list the out directory, and it does exist. It's just that VS Code doesn't show. And the other error that I got is that when you try to run the debug, it's gonna look for a different folder, which is the link or whatever. And I think this is because of the build, but I'm not really sure. The other command you run is the one to compile and generate the executable, which I think is auto ninja and whatever. Yeah, I don't have here, but there is on the documentation there. Then they recommend you to open from this directory here and then clone the VS Code, follow the VS Code tutorial there to generate this paths, this folder, the .vs code folder. And then the main files that you need to debug with VS Code is going to be task.json, launch.json. Task.json is going to be whatever you want to run before the VS Code executes the executable. So like the first task.json is like compiling, is the same, is analogous to compiling, and launch.json is analogous to executing. And what VS Code is going to do is going to run whatever build you put here based on the launch.json. So in the launch.json, you're going to put a flag, I think. There's going to be, it's going to allow you to determine something to run before. This pre-launch task, I think that's the flag. So whatever thing you put here has to be the same one that you have here. So it's the same label, which means that VS Code is going to run this command on the command line. In this case, it's going to use auto ninja with the C flag and this path in Chrome. It's going to run this command from the command line. Then after it runs this command, it's going to try to run the program, which is the path you pass here, which should be the path to the executable, with whatever arguments you pass as well. Then so it's like VS Code is running a process. After it does that, it's going to attach to the process. It's going to attach the debugger to the process, and the debugger is kind of like a model view controller pattern. So it's going to listen for the events that the executable has. And yeah, the breakpoints are going to be, like it's going to run the executable from that process. And then the process is going to generate, if it has the symbols, it's going to generate events which are going to allow the VS Code to put or to react in whatever way you put there. So I think I'm just going to go over some of the files here. Also took these pictures from some of the documents that they have there. Obviously, I never read this, so I don't know like where are the files that matter or anything really. So I guess one thing that I could do is search for the patterns that I'm interested on there. And that's what I was gonna do. I think I already tried to search, but I didn't find this. So I think probably the best thing to do is to go over based on the Windows API to see if I can find if it runs anything directly with that. So obviously Chromium is extremely complex, so I think it's probably going to take me some time to understand how everything works. But the main goal is to figure out So I want to figure out the main things are the how do they implement this focus in and focus out or activate from when you click the icon of the application. And the other thing is how do they implement the maximize logic. So I guess I can use ChatGPT as well to ask like for patterns and try to see how to find each thing. So I guess this render view house a good idea to search for. IPC is inter-process communication. This is another thing that it might be good to search for because I'm probably gonna use this as well on Godot. So the way that it works is that you have two processes, and you create the bridge between them, which is like an API. It's kind of like sending network requests, but is inside of the same system. So one process creates the other one, and then they create a channel to send messages to. And then this channel can have different protocols. So it's like it works, as far as I understand, very similarly to the way that a communication between client and server through the wire works, but obviously without going over, just between the abstractions, and it's going to be based on the operating system, I think, like the way that the operating system has its API set up to handle multiple different processes. Because as far as I understand, the way that it works is you can have the hardware pipeline, and depending on what kind of hardware you have, you're going to have multiple different cores. The cores are just the pipelines with whatever channels of communication the pipelines require to synchronize between each other. And each pipeline is gonna run, can run multiple different processes, and the thing that is gonna manage the relationship between the processes is gonna be the operational system. Usually the way that they do this is by implementing a timer to make sure that no process can run forever and stall the execution, because when the process is running, obviously the operating system can't run. So like the operating system is like the manager of programs that run. Programs are the binary that are gonna be specified based on the architecture of the computer, which has the control logic embedded into the hardware. So a function on the hardware is a multiplexer. So it's a logic gate that allows you to predetermine what's going to happen when you receive a certain amount of signals from the inputs, like it's going to transform that into an output. And because of that, it allows you to encode functions. They are based on selectors, which are control lines, impulses. So based on this, you can have the logic. So it's like the operating system has structs that are going to manage the data of each process. And when the process starts, they're going to have, the operating system has on its abstraction the logic that determines like what it means for the process, for a process to run, which is going to be the split of memory spaces that the process uses. And after the moment that it creates everything, it's just going to take the code from the file, which is the program, and it's going to start executing that. But when the operation system executes that, the process is going to take over the pipeline of the CPU, which means that the operation system can't run obviously, because the process is running. And in order to prevent that process from running forever, it does everything based on timers, and that's the concept of a scheduler. So operational systems work based on these schedulers and the hierarchy of importances. So that's the difference basically between the threads and the processes. So the threads are going to be different lines of execution that the same process uses, and a multi-process architecture is going to be when you have multiple processes running at the same time, and the difference is going to be the operating system abstraction. So I think the processes is basically the same pattern, but processes are from the operating system level, and threads are from the process level, but it's the same pattern. It's running multiple things at the same time. And if you have a process that is going to use this inter-process communication, then you need to create a bridge between the two, which is going to be done by the operating system. In order to do that, you have to use a protocol. So imagine that this is what they are doing here. So it's probably going to be something like HTTPS, like TCP protocol, that they're going to use to initialize the different processes. And I think each tab is a process as well. And obviously, I think that it has to depend on the architecture and what operational system is running as well. Oh, the thing that they talk about on the documentation, I think, is that they use this IPC architecture in order to provide sandboxing. So that's why the browser is more secure than normal applications, because you can put the heuristics of what is going to run based on the IPC. So the IPC structure is the thing that determines the path of data from whatever is running inside of the browser and whatever is going to run inside of the operating system. The operating system can write and read files, but I think that the browser can't. So they put like the limitations or heuristics on the IPC, which is the channel of communication between the processes. I should probably write the names. I think from this, just one name that I wanna write there. Is the name of the first class to search for. And this is from one of the videos. IPC to browser. So imagine the way that it works is that like when you run the browser, the main process is going to be the browser itself. Then every tab you run is going to be a child process, I think, and then it creates this IPC channel between them. So it's like based on events, whatever happens on that child process, it's going to send that to the OS, which is going to send to the browser based on the IPC protocol, and then the browser determines what happens. So maybe render view. I need to find what I'm gonna ask GPT for the name of the class that, or maybe like to clarify the structure of the title bar, where it creates the title bar and the stuff that matters to me. Also, they have this policy interception. Let's see, clients policy. Yeah, so this is where the sandbox is. So I imagine that some part of the code is going to have some classes that they're going to have heuristics of what can happen. Oh, the other thing that matters a lot on one of the most important things on the hardware is going to be interrupt. There's a name. I'm going to search for the file. But it's basically a bus. It's kind of like a bus that connects all the processes and has logic on the control node or the control signals. It has logic to determine what happens on interrupts, or because in order for the operating system to be able to stop a process from running, it has to interrupt the process. So like the main program that is always running on the computer is going to be the operating system. So the OS is the main program that runs, and it's like the manager of all the other programs. So the way that it manages everything is based on the scheduler, and then it's going to have this interrupt on the hardware, which the OS is also going to use. So it's going to manage these interrupts in order to stop processes from running. And when it does that, then both the hardware has a protocol to cache stuff like on the hardware itself because it's more efficient, which I forgot the name. I think, yeah, reorder buffer. So reorder buffer is one of them that is related to this. And there are other names that I forgot. But I think that reorder buffer is more for speculative execution, is not related to. But I think it might be related. Yeah, but when the OS interrupts the process, it's gonna save everything on abstraction that the OS has in order to restart the process from the point that is stopped before. And all the code is gonna be basically files that it writes on memory. So this is the one that I wanted to say. Render view host. Process host. This there's also like a special hardware that is responsible for the navigation or the communication protocols. Yeah, but this is a different thing, I think. Yeah, it's a different thing than IPCs. I forgot the name of the thing. Searching for interrupts. Is there? Yeah, this is basically the one of the most important things as well. It's advanced programmable interrupt controller. Hardware structure that connects CPUs, explained on exception handling on Linux book. Yeah, so there's an exception and a interrupt. The exception is when the program itself, the process itself has an error. So it throws an exception and then saves the state on, I think, registers or those special hardware components. And then there's the interrupt, which is when the operating system wants a process to stop so it can run something else that has higher priority on the scheduler. So yeah, the names related to this on the hardware is reorder buffer and reservation stations. This is related to speculative execution as well, because it tries to execute everything using the reorder buffer before it executes. So it predicts the branch that is going to be executing in order to optimize speed. But the problem with this is that it caches everything on a register after it executes. But if the prediction was wrong, it's going to flush the reorder buffer. So it's going to discard the executions that it took speculatively, but it's going to keep the cache, which allows you to, based on time intervals, to derive information from the addresses. It's like a side channel attack. And the interrupt descriptor table is also related to this, I think. So I'm gonna close this. Let's search. Also looks like the finisher. Yeah, so now because I passed the flag there, it's gonna use that flag to set the on the OS window, which is gonna remove the normal window. But now I can't resize the window here because I didn't implement the logic. But I can drag because I use GPT to implement the logic for me, which is just gonna be on Godot. You have the input functions that are gonna be used for all the classes because they're base. I think there are virtual functions on the node class, which is the base class that Godot uses for all the nodes on the sync. So when you override the function, depending on what kind of input you have, it allows you to put your own logic. So this is basically the function here that's going to allow me to drag the window without having the normal title. So it receives the event, then based on the event, it tracks, saves the position, the state of the class, and then does the dragging based on the flags here. Yeah, but this is the thing. So when I click the application here, it goes back, it restores to the normal size. But if I click again, it doesn't do anything. So it's kind of annoying because what I want to happen is to minimize the application when you click here again. But it works for like restoring, but not for clicking. And I am 100% confident that the reason why, because I think I comment all the code here out, and it still goes back to normal. So I think the reason why it goes back to normal is something to do with the operational system. So the operational system implements this logic, the Windows operating system. I haven't tested on the other OSs, but on Windows, that's what happens. So I think they implemented logic, and here is just to handle the logic between focus in and focus out. So it's not related to this restoring. The other thing that is annoying is that when you maximize here, it goes to full screen because it doesn't have the decorations. I think that's what makes it go full screen. So obviously not what I want. But and then when you minimize here, you get this error, and this error comes from the tab bar. So there's something weird to do with the sizing of the window when you maximize from the normal window mode to the other one. The way that I'm maximizing is by these functions here as well. So I'm basically just changing the flag of the window based on whether or not is which mode it is at. And then when you try to click on the application again, it doesn't work anymore. Because I think it's because of this bug here. But I'm not 100% sure, I don't know what is happening. The way that they do it on the Windows terminal is by doing what I was trying to do here as well, based on them. Which I think is like when this runs and this activator here, this parameter is different than inactive, it's going to be active. So this condition here. So when it's not active is when it's like is when you want the application to minimize. So that's why I put this logic here to minimize the window. And this is going to call another function from the OS to minimize, which is the show window here. So depending on which flag you pass, it's going to change the state of the window. So when you call that function with the minimize, it's going to call here with minimize, which should minimize the window. But what happens is that it flickers, it goes back to the previous state. So it minimizes very quickly and then it restores again. And I thought that was something to do with this timer here. So this sets another event to run. So it basically runs this function here after some time if the window is focused in, I think. Or, yeah. So if the window is focused in, it's going to call this timer here. And it's something to do to prevent some bug with Windows, I think. So I thought it might be because of that. And I tried to change that part as well, but it didn't work. So I think it's probably something else that is going on here. Zone W timer. Yeah, so here, so that timer there that they have on the other one is gonna make this run after some time, which is gonna run this thing here or this. I tried to change this and it didn't work. Maybe I changed the wrong way. I'm not sure, but I think it's probably something else that is going on. Because this, in my mind, should make it toggle. Or maybe it's because I should put restore here. But it must be calling twice. So I think that somehow this calling this triggers another event on the OS that is going to make this call again. And then it's going to be on a different state, which is going to make the window restore again when it shouldn't. I think one thing that I was thinking about is making a flag variable in the class, and then based on the flag variable, I just return the function if it's set. Also, they do have here. Looks like it's on third parties. There's this one UI display. It should probably be these ones here. It's probably not going to be straightforward to figure out what is going on because I think it's going to require me to understand like how all the classes are related, to understand how it works when it turns on there. Just seeing. Let's ChatGPT. Where can I search for to solve these two problems? And also DeepSeek, which I'm using now. Sometimes DeepSeek is better, but sometimes GPT is better. It really depends on the prompt. They're probably very similar models under the hood, I would assume. So let me think about how to ask this. So now when I click here, it goes minimizes but then restores again. It's still fucked up. So it's still searching because there's shit ton of files. But I think that's probably the main function here. The other ones are for third parties. This one's for the testing. So it must be one of the two. I assume this is a Windows function. I'll look for this on the documentation. Because probably window process what it stands for. But it should be this like the similar one that they have on Godot there. It's just gonna be the function that listens for the messages. There must be a like better way to do this. I think the reason why it's taking a lot of time. I'm pressing on VS Code's F12 to go to the definition, but I think it's taking a lot of time because there's a bunch of files. So, and it's also because it's searching here, and it's probably because I'm building as well. There must be a better way to figure this out here, or find the definition manually. Maybe this has a header. Okay, that's probably this thing. Hello message. There's another thing I can do is open the. It seems kind of annoying, but I think each time that I want to search for something, I can open the subfolder, then search on the subfolder, go back to this one. So what is happening here is that is a virtual function. So I think that's obviously there's going to be abstract base class, which means that there's going to be a derived class that implements the function. And then I think for each kind of event or each kind of window, probably each kind of platform, I think it's probably the same paradigm that Godot uses. So they use abstract base classes, and then for each platform they have a derived class that implements the functionality. And assume what is happening is that they're gonna handle here. So they check the weak pointer is probably a class that they use to the raw pointer is a class that they use to make it easier to manage the objects. So they're gonna initialize these objects. What is this class? I think this is a class, probably. Message handlers. So this is probably a macro that initializes a class. I think. Yeah, it has to be. Class view exports. An object that handles messages for each window that implements the view's custom frame look. The purpose of this class is to isolate the window's specific message handling from the code that wraps it. It is intended to be used by both a view's native widget and an Aura window tree host implementation. This object should eventually become the window implementation. So it inherits from this thing here. Put method observer. It is kind of annoying that I can't press F12, not gonna lie. It's gonna be a lot harder, I think, to find everything. I guess it probably is easier to ask ChatGPT. So for each thing I can ask ChatGPT, go back and forth. I can also search on everything to see if I can find definitions of this. Hmm. Browser. Yeah, it seems like the Windows security is getting cracks based on the Chrome thing. And I have to investigate this later. But ChatGPT said that's a false positive. And it might be something to do with like they create like simulate malicious software to test the browser. Then Microsoft Windows Defender thinks it's a threat. But I'm gonna have to see this as well later. Just kind of annoying. So it's saying UI views frame, custom frame. And there is no frame. Maybe it's a different folder. Let's Chrome browser UI views. So obviously it seems that this folder here is used to like has the functions to calculate the sizes and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. Like I'm not sure if I'm seeing the right file because it seems that this doesn't is only for the button. It just initializes based on this. It might be another file that it's talking about. I think one of the files that it mentions is this one here, one of the classes. But it doesn't have anything there, so it's kind of weird. UI views, message handler. And that's the one that I was seeing. I guess the question that I have to focus on is how do they get the maximum size? That's what I was thinking. Because like obviously you don't know what kind of monitor people are using and the resolution. So Like if you don't, even if you initialize with the mode to maximize, I think it would just be the full screen on Godot. And I think that the way that they do it on Chromium is probably they are gonna put the exact size for the maximum window, taking into account the size of the custom bar. So they're not gonna put on the maximize mode. They're gonna put on window mode, and then they're gonna manually change the size of the window. I think that's what they are doing. Let's go. And the issue is that this a lot of these classes are gonna be base classes, and then I can use the F12 to go to the definition. It's kind of annoying. Sure, what's going on? I'm asking the same question to DeepSeek. I'm gonna be right back. I'll be right back. Based on this here, I think this is most likely the file that has the class. Browser. An instance of this class represents a single browser window on desktop. All features that are scoped through a browser window should have lifetime semantics scoped through an instance of this class, usually via direct or indirect ownership of a standard unique pointer. See browser window features and tab features. Browser window interface gonna be. It should probably be on the same folder. Let's see, it includes. Let's see if I search for interface, it's gonna be easier to find. Browser window interface, Chrome browser UI. Browser UI, browser window, public browser window interface. Yeah, it's gonna be this one. Browser window interface. So this is the base class. So I have to figure out how do I get the derived classes. And I'm gonna focus on this one more. So obviously this should be the main class for a single browser window on desktop. So I'm gonna write this. Obviously this is one of the main classes. So I think I'm gonna go based on the constructor first. It's probably at the end. Create for her. Okay, so this is just going over there. Hmm. The most annoying thing is that I can't use the search here very well. So I have to think about like the main thing that I'm trying to figure out now is so obviously these are the functions that are gonna create the window, I think. The browser window. And they're just gonna change the state of the class, I think. So I'm trying to think about how to find the place where they are gonna initialize this window. Because at some point it has to there needs to be a connection between this class obviously and the message handler thing. So I think I need to find that connection. So I need to find the moment that the Chromium's code is gonna interface with the Windows API. Maybe it should exclude third party. And ask ChatGPT. What is this? Yeah, that's what I imagine. So this is just initializing the values of the member variables. It's probably a good idea to search based on the Windows functions. Where was that thing? Yeah, so browser list here. So that one's gonna put here as UI browser list. What's the name of that? Set browser. So I guess a good idea. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT what function do they use to initialize the window. It's kind of because that class should be for the window inside of the application. So I think the browser class is just responsible for a single tab. No, but actually it might be responsible for the whole window. I think it's responsible for the whole window. It's because you can have multiple different browser windows, obviously. Yeah, so I think that class is responsible for the window. And then you're probably gonna have other classes that are responsible for the tab. So what I'm gonna ask is what function do they use to initialize the Windows window? Let's see if I can search for it here first. It doesn't matter that much. So it looks like neither one of these classes. Hmm. Okay, so these are the styles that they're using to initialize. Obviously, I'm not sure if this is the one that is actually used or the other one. But I think it doesn't matter that much for what I'm trying to do. So they do it with the overlapped. Let's clip children. Oh, there was something about this. I think it was one on one Stack Overflow or something like that, where they, or maybe it was on the window documentation where they talk about this. Yeah, so it was overlapped window here. So they say that in order to, yeah, I think I tried this style as well. So in order to avoid this problem with the maximization, you should use this style. But then there's something weird that happens with this style as well. So I'm gonna try to put this one there. So what I did was basically change the display server there. And the issue is obviously I'm not really sure if it's gonna affect the other stuff because I think that's this is another annoying part on Godot that like there's different types of windows. So when you create pop-ups, for example, they're probably gonna use the borderless window. So I might fuck up the other one. So I kind of have to understand other logic. So, but what I did temporarily was to change the overlapped window here instead of the pop-up. That's what I'm gonna copy this and then I'm gonna do the other one and see. But I already tried this, but it's gonna be kind of weird on the like it becomes glitchy the window. But I do think it solves the maximization thing. So maybe I need to. I didn't test with the other flag though. Maybe I need to do the boolean thing here. Yeah, I guess I can do it with this thing as well. Because it should have a bar there, I think. I'll try like this first. But maybe this is just for whenever using the pop-up. As far as I checked, the only place that actually matters for the OS flags is this function because the other functions are gonna use this one. So I think that's the only place where I have to change. There's another one that I think is related to forms or yeah, I guess I can search for here. It's this one, the other one, dialog input tags. But I think it doesn't matter that much, this one. So I'm just gonna change the other one there. So this is one of the problems. So if this solved, it would be very nice. And the other one, oh, it didn't say. The other one's gonna be the icon click. Obviously, I'm not really sure if that's the one or this one. So I guess I can try this one, this flags here, if it's not the other one. Create child window. Make the window transparent for inputs. So it's probably not this one. Why is it locating a bitmap that would otherwise be allocated with accelerator, the bitmap, blah blah blah. I assume that's probably this header here, the one that has this function. I think that this is probably the namespaces. It's gonna be on base. It's this one. So it's just changing the variables on the class, or no, it's changing the values on this one, on the last argument. That's through media class. So this is the window. I can't go to the definition. So I think it is from Windows. So this is a different kind of window. It's probably the window for videos like it says there. Which has video window class. But it's different than the one that I'm searching for. So yeah, I think that's very likely that is either one of the two there. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT as well. It seems to be the other one because this is for child. Create a child window. Make the window transparent for inputs. Yeah, I think it's probably the other one. This is for tests as well. This is for videos. Let's see. This is also interesting, but I think this is something else. So this DLL is a Windows dynamic linker library that has the user code, and T is also a prefix that uses Windows uses. But I think just probably mapping something, and it is from the tools, so I think it's something else. Create system call map. UI views when so Windows. Yeah, maybe it changed the path. So UI views, Windows, window implementation. It doesn't have this path, so I think that they probably changed and ChatGPT either hallucinating or has the wrong information or is like, yeah, it's probably they changed the name or the path. As this is something else, I think. The screen window. Maybe it's here. It's the name. I guess I can use Ctrl Shift P as well. I think that it's probably this file here, which is the one that I was looking before. They just changed the path at some point, and ChatGPT has the wrong information. It's gonna take a massive amount of time. And so this is interesting as well. I'm gonna write this. So I think that here what's happening is that they're using the OS functions to get the information of the window before changing to full screen. So obviously one thing that I can do is use the same functions and then just change the data structure where I'm saving the information on Godot. And I think this is the logic to go full screen. Like the name says, process full screen. Like obviously, I think that's gonna be, hopefully it works for the debug version. I'm gonna try upstream, obviously. The downside is that it takes massive amount of time to compile all this. But I'm gonna try to run, but if the debugger works, then it's gonna be a lot easier, I think, to understand. Because then I can go over, I can put breakpoints on these parts and then just press F5 and get you the points. Or I can kind of understand what is going on, but it's hard because I don't have the full picture. So it's kind of confusing because of this, like there's several different implementations of these things. And obviously is because the design and because I assume that for multiple different platforms, you need to have different codes. So I think that the way that they are doing is very similar to Godot's. Is you have derived classes, you have base classes that have the interface of the implementation, and then you have a bunch of derived classes that depend on what platform is running. And then those classes are going to implement the functions from the operational system to initialize everything. Then they have a bunch of other code related to JavaScript and other stuff like that, and the IPC code as well. And I think that they are also using an observer pattern. Obviously, it has to be observer pattern because they're going to create the browser, and the browser use the input event handler and stuff like that to capture events. So obviously they have to implement this here on C++. But obviously I don't know for sure. Like it's not clear on my mind how the classes are connected there. It seems that one of the classes there on the browser class is going to be the main class that creates the actual window. So it's the actual like the whole thing that manages everything. And then after they create that, they put that on the browser list, which is another class. And they're probably gonna use the browser list at some point on the system to actually create like the background or the backend of the code that manages the window. I assume that that's what it's, so probably the browser is gonna run on one of those like the front end stuff. Then the browser list is kind of the bridge. So probably at some point the browser list is used by a process on the like behind the scenes, or the main process behind the scene, which is the code, and that's what creates the window. And I think that the GOX there is a folder that contains all the logic, this UI GFX. Maybe was another one as well, but I think this folder here is probably where they have all the logic for like sizes and geometry, and maybe other stuff as well. The geometry folder here, I think this was the other one that had the other initialization there for the buttons or whatever that is. So I think this is probably the folder that manages the window, the nuances of the window. Has an IPC here. So there must be a connection between the browser class and the other codes there. So this function here that initializes the actual window, I think it's this one. Oh, it was another. No, I think it is this one. Initialize window class. It has to be this one. Oh, this is the other one that I was seeing. So there must be a connection between this function and the browser class there. Class register retrieve class atom. So obviously what I can do is search based on this pattern now. I think what I have to do is maybe go over with SkyDraw and design draw the flowchart to connect the points. Then once I do that, it's gonna be a lot easier to understand like the flow of data between everything. But I think I'm probably not even gonna need that, hopefully. So I think that I need to see what's gonna help is the OS API documentation. So I need to see like additionally based on the styles that they initialize the window there, what are the key parts that are related to the maximizing logic. So I need to draw the connection between the classes based on that. The other part that is related, but I think is probably going to be different, obviously, is going to be the message one. That is kind of weird there, that it doesn't have anything. So I assume that it's going to implement at some points in some derived class the actual message handling. Like here, it doesn't seem to have anything, and then on the actual class is a virtual thing. So I think that's probably some class related to the other ones, the window ones. are gonna have this function that is gonna parse the messages. Then on this function here, I need to see, maybe I can search based on the type. Like this is the parameter that matters. But I think it's gonna be hard unless they, yeah, I can try just see if they put with the same name. But it's gonna be better once it finish here because I think that's once the compilation finishes here, it's gonna be faster to search the files, and obviously I'm gonna read the documentation as well and search for resources with a search engine and then ask GPT as well. So doing all that, then writing all the names of the files and doing the scatter, I think that's gonna be easier to figure out. I think I need to find the function that is gonna parse this parameter here, then find the activate thing. I already searched for that, but I couldn't find anything. So it must be something that happens like indirectly has the logic. Actually, I can put the. So maybe I should write down the folders that matter that matter more, and put on the include here. Then after I do that, it's gonna be a lot faster to search everything. Oh, pre-handle message. Oh, here. Yeah, so this is one of the points. Has to be. So I think that this is for something else probably, because it doesn't have any logic. Or maybe it does this here and then additional things here. Actually, based on this, it's probably better. Just search. It just returns false. I think this is probably a base class. Yeah, overrides. So I assume that on this instance is going to return false, but maybe some other types are gonna return something else and do the parsing. There are multiple different types of windows. This is gonna be the one for, I think that it depends based on the platform, like I said before. So this is probably the base class. Then depending which kind of platform it is. Yeah, but it should have some parts code to manage. Actually, maybe not, now that I think about it. Because I think based on the flags, it might change the behavior of the icon as well. So maybe the main problem is the flag. Hopefully I'm gonna be able to see here. So I changed the flag there to this, from this to this. Yeah, but this is the weird thing that I was talking about. So it has this thing here, which I think is like the outline of the. So probably the decoration is this part here that it shows, and this is the part where I had the window. So I have to. Oh, but now it is resized. I think before when I was doing this, or maybe when I resize here. Yeah, when I resize here, it gets fucked up here. So it's something to do with that. I remember I tested this, and this is exactly what happened. So I need to. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT obviously, and if you can't find an answer, GPT, DeepSeek, and then search. But I have to think about like how to ask so that I can search on how they solve this on like this style. And then I also have to test the pop-ups after this. So let me. Oh, but yeah, now I have to see. I have to compile again, which kind of sucks. I forgot to change there. To remove this stuff here. But I think that it might be because of this style. So with that style that I have there now, it's probably going to the icon is gonna work normally because the window has the decoration. I just need to figure out how to stop it from doing that weird thing where it's drawing the decoration and where it's supposed to have the old window. So I need to figure out how to put that into like a nice format to for ChatGPT. Yeah, that's probably what I'm gonna do. So figure out how to ask, then go back to searching here and figure out how they solve this. Then try to translate to Godot. Yeah, if it fucks up for the... Actually, I have a better idea. I can leave the code as it was before, but then just add an additional option. That makes a lot more sense. Because then I don't have to worry if it's gonna break everything else. So I can put let me I can put an additional mode there, I think. Yeah, so set flag. Yeah, I can add a flag here. So borderless with different style. And add a flag here. And then I set it true. And then based on that flag, I do something else. That's probably what I'm gonna do. It might be annoying because of this. So in some parts of the engine, they have like some checks to see the size of the enum, and that's why they put like max. So it might break some stuff, but that's probably the best way to do it. So it's probably easier to solve this error with the enum to add an additional option here than it is to change the old one, because there might be the most annoying kinds of bugs are going to be on the runtime. So I think it's more likely that I get a runtime error if I change the old one. Then if I change here, it's more likely that I think it's more likely that I'm going to get a compile time error if I change the flags here. And then I change the other function so that if he has that flag, I set the original, or I set the flags that the Chromium uses. I can match here. This flag enabled. It styles. Window. Also, it changes through the window thing. So there's the value that matters. 4. And this is going to be the borderless on the other 3, 4. Yeah. So it's going to automatically change. Yeah, this. Oh, let me think about this. I'm gonna have to add another argument there. So I think I add another one in the end. I'm probably gonna put borderless no pop-up as the argument and add to the end. Then I change the logic here. It was a lot faster now. Yeah, so browser is here. So this should be where the class browser is. Like class browser is this one on here, I think. Top level browser window. Web contents, tab contents, render view, host. So I have to figure out what points on these classes here. But maybe it doesn't matter. I do think like it's very interesting to study Chromium, and I already planned in doing that, like I said before. So I'm probably gonna spend a lot of time studying Chromium anyway to because I want to clarify like from the all the way like from the bottom to the top the connection of the requests. I already spent a bunch of time studying the links on the like how the protocols communicate with each other, the hardware connected, everything. So low level already understand everything. But the nuances of the browser, how it's gonna sandbox everything, I haven't studied. So I want to see from the moment that you, but obviously I might do that offstream because it might be, I don't wanna, might be risky, so I don't wanna expose anything, like the IP address. So I'm gonna have to think about that. But probably what I'm gonna try to do is clarify from the moment you put the URL, the whole flow of things that happen, and also like when it comes to cross-site scripting attacks and stuff like that. Chrome UI. Interesting. So now you changed the look here. It's kind of, oh, maybe it's because it didn't load, didn't fully load yet. It's not displaying the icon. Hmm. Oh, so it's because the other time, so it paints only once if you put that style. So the style that show up there first is probably the style for the flag there, but then it doesn't refresh because I think that's the responsibility of the application. But obviously, in my case, I don't want to have that space there, so I have to see how to remove that. Or I think I'm gonna stop streaming now. I'm gonna do the stuff that I said. So I'm gonna research more on GPT and try to figure out how to remove this thing here. But probably what I'm gonna do is use the flag because it's a lot simpler, and also I'm not gonna have to deal with this stuff here. Also, it seems like when you focus, it goes back to the thing. So the first click, it restores the size. Then the next click, you focus the application, and the other one, it minimizes. So since this flag solves the problem automatically, which is more annoying, I think I'm gonna use this one. Also, I didn't see, yeah, but it works here. So the biggest problem with this one is this stuff. I have to see how they, and obviously there must be a way since that's how they do it on the Chromium thing. So probably what I'm gonna do now upstream is search the functions or use GPT to ask the questions, then find the files that matter in functions, then go back to Chrome, search them, and probably gonna ask for the APIs, like what names, what keywords should I use for the Windows APIs to find stuff related to this problem. Then I'm gonna use that to search and use that in the files to search on Chromium's source code how they remove this stuff here. And after I do that, then I'm gonna change Godot's source. I think what I'm gonna do right away is when it comes to the style is the stuff that I said. So I'm gonna add another option. I'm gonna add another option on the enum, and I'm going to change this function here. So either it receives another argument, or based on the borderless argument here, I'm gonna see if I can figure out. Maybe I do a bitwise thing here. Yeah, so I can do like borderless and so I create another variable here, and if I put borderless and the whatever enum that I wanna do there, then I do like and I'm gonna ask GPT I think as well to see what it thinks is the best, and probably DeepSeek as well. But basically create another option here and then use the other flags and keep the old code because I think that's probably the best way. It's the highest chance that I'm gonna have errors on compile time. And if I change the old version, then it might work, it might compile everything, but then there's some edge cases that I'm gonna have errors on runtime, and then I might forget that I changed this, and then it's gonna be very annoying to solve. So I think this way is probably better. Then I'm gonna call the function from here to set the new thing that I create and use those flags. And after that, I figure out how to change this stuff here. And the other thing here is that when I click on maximize, it's not going back to the window mode. And I think when you do this here, it does go back. So I also have to figure out how they handle this. But it might be, I think it's because of the way that I have there. Like it's because of the function that I have on the. Yeah, but either way, I think you have to implement yourself if you're gonna use the custom one. Let me see. If I click here, it doesn't do anything. Interesting. So it did close there. Yeah, accidentally closed. So it looks like it does work in some situations, I think. Yeah, I want to investigate this more. So I'm gonna stop streaming now. Maybe next time I'll continue to explore this. But the main priority I have is to solve that on Godot. And once I figure that out, I'm gonna continue the rest of the stuff that I'm doing. But I might continue to study this next time on stream, or I'm going to either continue to study this or study hardware stuff, or go back to what I'm doing there to build the application on Godot. So see you next time.